Growing up, I learned how to shoot on a tree, and my cousins, it started because my cousins, they would be out there dunking on the branch. I would see them out there jumping up and dunking, and they were older, and I couldn't dunk. I was a lot smaller, so I would go out there and just shoot over the branch. I came over one day, the tree was cut down, and that was the first thing my grandmother told me when I walked in the house. "Did you see the tree got cut down?" And then, I was upset about it. And then that was when my grandfather said he had milk crates. He got his saw and he cut out the bottom of it, and we both kicked the crate in and we put a hole in it so I could shoot on it. And then he nailed it up on the telephone pole, and I started shooting on the telephone pole. And that was when I started to really fall in love with basketball.
With the 6th pick in the 2012 NBA draft, the Portland Trailblazers select Damian Lillard of Weber State University.
Team, it was no, you the 6th pick of the draft, it's your team. What is this your team stuff? You know what I'm saying? Now you're giving them the keys to the franchise. There's nobody there to really let them know, you super talented, but you gotta earn stuff around here. You know what I mean? You gotta earn your way. So they come in and everything is just given to them. That affects how they are, the way they play. They play for themselves. They play for stats. They, think that they're LeBron James when they make an all-star game, or, they get a max contract. It's just different. The NBA I play in now is not the NBA that I came into.
Damian Lillard is one of the most storied stars of the last decade. Drafted in 2012, he's a 7-time All-Star for the Portland Trailblazers, and he's had one of the greatest careers of any point guard in the 21st century. But he's requested a trade. Finally, after years of asking from us NBA fans, he's finally requested a trade, and it looks like he may be on the move, with the Miami Heat being his main team on his list. Now, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to NBA Now. I know it has been a little while, but we're going to get right into things here today. I hope you guys enjoyed the edit there at the beginning. But yeah, Damian Lillard, one of the best players that we've been able to see of this generation, has finally requested a trade out of Portland after years of us saying, let's break it up between him and CJ. That went too long. And then at this point, it just doesn't look like there's ever going to be a feasible way for a championship roster to be built around him in Portland. So he's finally requested a trade, and it looks like he's going to be on the move, with the Miami Heat being his clear target to be traded to. Damian Lillard, he went through a lot of adversity as a kid, didn't go to the greatest, school, but still ended up being drafted 6th overall, and made 7 All-Star teams when he was with the Portland Trailblazers. So what he did for that city is, up there with the likes of many. Outside of a championship, he is, one of the most accomplished players to ever play for that team, and easily the team's greatest all-time player. You could look at a guy like Arvydas Sabonis and stuff like that, who, accomplished stuff for them in the past and stuff like that. But Damian Lillard, I think he just holds a different level of commitment to the city, and really just a different level of intangibles when it comes to his play on and off the court. Whether it be his rapping or whether it be his, want to better the community that he lives in and such stuff like that, I think he'll forever be a Portland Trailblazer. And whenever he retires, ring or not, I know that his jersey will be retired in Portland. So he's definitely, one of the better players of this generation. And he made his name in Portland. But like I said, it just doesn't look like he's ever going to be able to win that championship there. And so that's why he wants out. Now, there's some other teams interested in him other than the Miami Heat. But, Damian Lillard has pretty much said he won't play for any other team other than Miami. And we'll kind of deep dive into Miami here in a second and how that would look, and how that trade may look. But I want to look at some other teams that I think potentially, even with Damian Lillard not saying that he wants to go there, whatever, when you look at the character of Damian Lillard, he's a stand-up guy, you know what I mean? He wanted to do everything he could to get Portland a championship, and that's why it's taken so long for him to request out, you know what I mean? He's past 30 at this point, and it's not like he's 27 or 28 where he's in the middle of his prime. However many years left of Damian Lillard at, his peak we have left, we'll have to just wait and see. His birthday's coming up here on July 15th, so happy early birthday to Damian Lillard. But, he'll be 33 here coming into this next season, which, yes, players are playing longer, into their primes and such like that. I think a number one example of that would obviously be LeBron James. I think Steph Curry's been an exemplary example of that as well. But there's only, so long that, a player can avoid father time. I think Dame's game has aged fantastically. In fact, his best years have really been, especially when you look at the offensive side, his best years have really been the last 2 or 3 years. I know Thinking Basketball has done some really good breakdowns on some of the stuff that he's been able to do in the regards to just, playmaking and just obliterating the other team as a one-man offense. I think you can look back at his 70-point per game, or not 70-point per game, but 70-point game this last season, in which him and Donovan Mitchell did it, and it was like Donovan Mitchell did it, and Damian Lillard a week later was like, hey, I can do this too, I'm him, right? So I think that's something we got to look at very closely, because it obviously shows, like, this guy, if he goes to a championship team, he can be a number one on a championship team. There's a reason Portland has had this hope to win with him for so long. And when you're speculating some other teams that he could go to, like I said, we'll get to the Heat here in a second, but say he goes to the Brooklyn Nets, right? This is another team that's been rumored to be after him, and I think it's a fantastic fit. More than likely, you would see Ben Simmons be moved in the trade, which, he's slowly working towards the last legs of his potential career at only 24 years old, but that's a conversation for another day. But you'd be able to pair him up with guys like Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Nick Claxton, Royce O'Neal, and some other guys, and like Cam Thomas could potentially be in the trade, but you might be able to pair him up with him as well. And that's a lot of solid players. I mean, I think you look at Mikal's real rise to stardom this last year. Once he got to Brooklyn, he really kind of hit another stride that we just hadn't seen from him when he was with the Phoenix Suns, which is really interesting to see when you think about pairing him with Damian Lillard, because some of Dame's best playoff runs came when he was paired with some wings that were able to defend and shoot the three, but none of them had the skill level that Mikal was able to show this last season, which I think he's only going to continue to get better based on what we saw. And it's not like he's old or anything like that. Like, he's still a very young player and has years ahead of him, so it's not like you are too concerned about injuries or such there, whereas with some other teams you may have some more injury concerns, and we'll talk about that here in a minute with another team I have on kind of the table of potential suitors here. But him and then Cam Johnson, we know he also stepped it up as well, but both of these guys have been to the finals before with the Phoenix Suns. They know what it takes to get there, and then to be able to surround him with some other supporting guys like Nick Claxton, who's one of the best defensive centers in the league, I think, with his switchability and such. Dorian Finney-Smith, who again is kind of that prototypical play with superstar player, whether it's him playing with Luka Doncic, whether it's him potentially playing with Damian Lillard. I think he would be a prototypical player to play with LeBron James. He's one of those guys that he's 3-and-D. He plugs a lot of holes and takes a lot of minutes, and good minutes for your roster. But you also have some other pieces that would potentially be interesting. I'm not sure if Dinwiddie would be moved in this, but Dinwiddie's on a 1-year, $20 million deal. If he's potentially there, that's another, guard next to Damian Lillard. But he's got a little bit more size than most guards that are getting paired next to Damian Lillard. I mean, you look at the CJ era, CJ was about 6'2". Spencer Dinwiddie's a good 6'5", 6'6", and he showed off-ball capability. So that would be a really interesting pairing in the backcourt if that did come to fruition. Or you would see a guy like Cam Thomas, who we saw last year was able to light it up and score 40 points per game repeatedly. Royce O'Neal is a defensive option and such, but yeah, I think the Brooklyn Nets hold one of the most interesting rosters to complement Damian Lillard. Another team would be the Utah Jazz. I haven't seen a lot of talk about them, and that both these teams, the Jazz and the Nets, hold tons of draft capital. I mean, when you're talking about like having lots of picks, you got to think the Jazz just traded Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert for some of the biggest hauls that we've ever seen for superstars. And Damian Lillard probably isn't going to get traded for more than 3 or 4 picks, especially if we're talking about the Miami Heat. But, the trade package that they can put together is phenomenal. I know they've been trying to shop Colin Sexton. I'm not sure if we'd see him go back in this trade. But even if you just look at a couple young players, they could probably throw in, if they wanted to throw in rookies, they'd have to wait a little bit, which we could see happen. I think it's a 30-day signing period for rookies to be traded. So it could take a little bit here for Damian Lillard to be traded as the offseason lingers on a little bit, leaving for more room of speculation. But you have a pretty clear front court going into next year after trading for John Collins, in which they only gave up a second-round pick, who I think he would play fantastically with Damian Lillard. But Lauri Markkanen made the All-Star team. John Collins, so Lauri at the 3, John Collins at the 4, and then a really standout player last year, Walker Kessler at the 5, really good defensively. You'd have, the ability to make more moves. You'd probably keep Jordan Clarkson, who's a 20-point-per-game scorer. Kelly Olynyk's a veteran that you'd have. Jalen Horton-Tucker would probably be moved in this. I assume Ochai Agbaji would be moved in this. And like I said, potentially Colin Sexton. But this front court is very well solidified. And if you could get Damian Lillard with this team, it would by far be the best front court that he, I think, could be paired with and would have been paired with for his entire career. So that brings a lot, to the table. And, I could totally see the Jazz just being like, look, we know the type of guy that Damian Lillard is. And we know he said he only wants to play for the Heat. But look, we've got all these picks, and we think that we have some guys that can help us compete real quickly after trading away Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. Let's get right back in this mix, and I could see him pulling the trigger. I think they're a deep sleeper for this trade potentially. Like, if Miami isn't getting a good third trade partner, if Hero's not going back to the Blazers, then look out for Utah to really be on the rise. Here as we get closer to that potential trade time, about 30 days after rookies have signed. So give it, another 2 or 3 weeks before we're really going to see Damian Lillard be moved. We're looking at a little bit more like late July, early August, I think is, prime Damian Lillard trade time. Another team is the Boston Celtics. This team has been ran through pretty much through the internet almost as much as the Heat and the Nets. I like the fit with it. I honestly don't know how I feel about this team. I think Jaylen Brown would have to be in the deal. I think he's too good of a player. And if Portland's going to do it, like Portland not trading Dame to the Heat is very interesting because of the loyalty that Dame has showed to Portland. And so if he doesn't go to the Heat and he, in fact, goes to one of these other teams like Boston, you're going to probably see a scenario in which, like, fans are going to be pretty mad. Unless you can get, a caliber of guy that you're just not going to get from the Heat. And I think Jaylen Brown is absolutely one of those guys, or, that plethora of picks that the Nets or the Jazz would be able to offer, in which it's just like, yeah, we traded Damian Lillard, but this is going to be a win for us in the long run because we were probably never going to win a championship with him, right? So Jaylen Brown, I think, would definitely be a needle mover here. It would create an interesting thing because you'd have two, top 10 players probably in Damian Lillard and Jason Tatum. And I mean, that's a heck of a duo, man. I mean, you go from Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, who I think are really good and they've made the finals, to Jason Tatum and Damian Lillard, and that's a whole step up. Along with the addition of Kristaps Porzingis, you'd still have Rob Williams at center, and you'd probably still have Brogdon or White. I don't know if you'd have both after this trade, but you'd probably still have one as well for some extra defense. It'd be still a very strong defensive team around Damian Lillard, and I think Damian Lillard could potentially push them over the edge. We've seen them in the finals, in the Eastern Conference Finals, repeatedly throughout the entirety of Jason Tatum's career, and especially in the last 2 years. And so this, I think is one of his best chances to win a championship. But to get to the team that he's probably going to in the Miami Heat it's interesting, man. I mean, this team, what you probably see in the trade is Kyle Lowry and Tyler Hero being shipped out, potentially Duncan Robinson. This team has a lot of contracts that they can get off easily that are big money. I mean, Tyler Hero straight up almost makes it work, I think. And then I'd assume Duncan Robinson would be shipped out just to open up a little bit more cap space. Again, this is another team that you would definitely probably be waiting on that 30 days because I assume Jaime Jaquez, who's been balling out so far in Summer League, would be in this trade along with Nikola Jovic, their first round pick last year. And so I think both those guys would be going to Miami or be going to Portland for sure. Tyler Hero is that big question mark where they're searching for a third team. Brooklyn's come up as that third team that might get Hero, where I do like him, especially if they can keep Simmons and something like that and give Simmons one more chance. That makes an interesting roster for them. But besides the point, Damian Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo, that's one of the most interesting combos that you can come up with for the league, and it would be fascinating to watch and see if they could get it done after the Heat have made it to the finals twice recently, losing this last year against my Nuggets, but this is a crazy good team. They've made it to the finals 2 of the last, 3 or 4 years. They made the conference finals in between that. And Jimmy Butler's never been a guy that you've looked at from afar, like, hey, this guy's the number one on a championship team. But he's got him there. He's got him to the finals. And I think he's slowly earned his respect throughout the entirety of basketball, whether it's mainstream media or not, throughout the entirety of the community. You know what I mean? I think everybody's, finally been like, okay, he's Jimmy Butler, right? And that obviously keeping Bam is key in this. You need to have that somewhat of a big three. It lets Bam be your third option, which is so much better than him having to do these pull-up mid-ranges against like Nikola Jokic or something like that in the finals. Like, you can let him really hone in on his defense and be that pick-and-roll partner for both of these guys, which would be fantastic when it came to that. I would feel a little bit bad for Big Booty Lowry having to be moved off of there, as obviously he went there to try and help them be that third guy, but he had such a decline once he went to Miami. It was clear that, he wasn't going to be that third guy for them, and they were missing such a scoring punch this last postseason, yet they still made the finals and were competitive, at least I would say. But yeah, Damian Lillard, I think, puts them as the favorites in the East, having made the finals multiple times recently. Without him, it would be really hard for me to say that he wasn't, or that the Heat weren't the favorites. Now, maybe they don't, they aren't the first seed or whatever, but I would still really put a lot of stock in them, as obviously we saw this last season. Seeding, it matters who you have once it comes to playoff time and how you play. Seeding is up and down. The Lakers moved on, the Warriors moved on, and they were 6 and 7. The Heat made the finals and they were 7. So seeding, it matters. Home court advantage obviously helps. The Nuggets are a prime example of that, being the 1 seed and winning the championship. But I would definitely take the Heat over the Bucks. I think I have some question marks. We'll see how Giannis comes back from injury. I don't think it should be too bad, but they're continuing to age. Brook Lopez isn't getting any younger. Drew Holiday isn't getting any younger. Chris Middleton isn't getting any younger. And I think, especially when you look at Chris Middleton, I think Brook Lopez is the best example of a guy who's aged very well on that team. But Chris Middleton, I think, showed some signs of decline this last season, so we'll see how he comes back from that. But yeah, I would take them over the Bucks, I think, just based on track record. Obviously, the Bucks have won a championship recently, but I think adding Damian Lillard to a team that's made it multiple times, it's hard to not put them as the favorites in the East. And, if you're seeing like the Celtics or the Bucks, they're going to be right there with them. We'll see what the Sixers do with Harden. That leaves it up in question, but it's a guaranteed top 3 team, I think. And I think that's inarguable. So it's so interesting to think about this, and just the ripple effect that it could have across the NBA, especially if he's not traded for much. Because like I said, if he goes to the Miami Heat, I don't really know how much Portland's going to end up getting back, and I think that's where he's going. So it'll be interesting to see how star trades go in the future after seeing Bradley Beal, who obviously had the leverage in Washington, not get traded for much. But, they did turn it into more after trading Chris Paul, and I'll give respect to Washington's GM for that. But if Damian Lillard goes for not much, Bradley Beal goes for not much, we could potentially be starting to see a trend where, these 8 picks that we're getting traded for stars, it's like, oh, hold up, we're not mortgaging the whole future for stars that might only play here 2 years, and there's no guarantee of a championship. I think the prime example of that is the Clippers, where they have Paul George and Kawhi, and they traded everything for Paul George, and it's been 4 or 5 years now that team's been together, and we're still really waiting for a full season with them. And a lot of that's due to health and, some of that, and that's kind of an uncontrollable aspect of the basketball, but it's no guarantee. I think Brooklyn is another example of that, in which you had KD, Kyrie, Harden, Simmons, all these guys that they kept bringing in, and it just never came to fruition. And that might be a foot away from a championship regardless if you look back on it in history, but it's one of those things you have to take into account, where trading for stars hasn't worked as much as we might like to think it has, and so that could affect some more star trades in the future as a ripple effect. But yeah, lastly, I really wanted to wrap up this video talking a couple things. If the Heat don't make the finals in Damian Lillard's tenure with them, if he goes there, we might need to have some conversations about Damian Lillard all time, because Obviously, he's had the excuse of not having the team around him in Portland, but if he gets to Miami or if he gets to Boston or something like that, that's made it recently, and they don't with him, there's going to be a lot of fingers to be pointed at Damian Lillard. But I do think, like I said, either way, that would make either of those teams probably the favorite for me in the Eastern Conference. And then Damian Lillard's legacy with the Portland Trailblazers, like I said, easily the best star in franchise history, will have his jersey retired there one day. I saw that he liked a tweet of hopefully wanting to go back after he wins a championship somewhere else, and having his LeBron, like, this is for you Portland moment, which I think that would be awesome to see. Honestly, I don't think it would happen, but who's to know? That's for the future of the NBA. And obviously, as the channel says, we're just talking about the NBA now. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Appreciate it. Let me know where you guys think Damian Lillard's going to go and what the impact is going to be now and on the future of the NBA. But, yeah, with all that said, I hope you guys have a good day.